Jonathan, what brings your carcass crawling back into my glorious personal chambers? Surely you recall how our previous visit concluded.
Sorry, old man. You needed me for something, boss?
Do I need you? Oh no, poor boy, quite the opposite. I haven't needed your sorry rump since 1933, and even then it was because I had fallen mysteriously ill on your behalf. Now tell me, what the devil is this film review you've thrown rather unwillingly into my luxurious gaze?
Oh, that one then. It's for a new Hitchcock film called Rebecca. It's quite good.
Master Jonathan, might I inquire as to whether or not you actually bothered to read your so-called review? I see you wrote here that you think Hitchcock is overrated. Now tell me, do you seek to embarrass this fine institution we've taken so long to build a legacy around? Or perhaps even beyond that, do you seek to embarrass me? I'll have you know that I greatly prefer to be told these things to my face.
What? Oh, I don't know. I thought it was alright. I like the symbolism, I guess. I wish there was a ghost is all.
A ghost. By Churchill's mother, do you have any idea how idiotic this review comes across? I've heard better ideas from men just on the verge of death.
Well, that's not a bad idea, actually.
Hold on just a moment, the phone is ringing. Yes, it is me, Samuel, managing editor of British Esquire Enquirer. What's that? We've been bought by an American corporation. You're coming at noon to lay off our entire staff. All of our reviews and articles are being given to freelancers. Stereotypical British accents are quite rude, actually, and you can believe it's not margarine? Gosh. Well, Jonathan, I suppose that quite does it. We're done here at British Esquire Enquirer for good this time. Good riddance.
Hey, boss. Cheer up, mate. Not all bad. Nothing we can't shake off with a little song.
But guys, this just feels forced. I mean, what are we doing here? Why do you think this is necessary?
Oh, you don't like it?
I mean, well, I get it, I guess.
Yeah, it was a little weird. I guess, Sam, we could just do the
Yeah,
show.
fine. Fuck it. Let's
We're
do
gonna do it anyway. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome, friends and film lovers, to Extra Milestone, the Cinemaholic spin-off series, where we choose a milestone film or two, celebrating a notable, or three if it's Sam Nolan and he is just laying down some gunfire on these film reviews.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, we choose a milestone film or two or three or four, hopefully not ever anytime soon.
We haven't done four yet.
Not yet. When one of these films is celebrating a notable anniversary, and then we watch or rewatch the film and discuss whether or not it went the extra mile in its filmmaking, thus making it an extra milestone. I'm John Negroni, your host for this dark and stormy evening at the Cinemaholics Manderley, located just a stone's throw from your local internet connection. And you haven't seen his face this entire time, but I promise that is not an artistic decision. It's Sam Nolan.
Yes, also because this is an audio podcast, that probably explains why. Yes, no faces here. But, John, enough about us. The listeners are bored with us. John, we have a guest with us today.
For the first time on Extra Milestone, I'm thrilled to invite Emily Kubin-Kanek to the stand. Emily, how do you defend yourself? I mean, sorry, how are you doing?
I plead the fifth on both questions.
It's so great to have you for the first time on the show. For those of you who are milestone purists, Emily, you've been on a couple times with Cinemaholics.
Yeah, I think twice.
Yeah, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, Plot Against America. It's always stuff that starts with a P.
Yeah. We're breaking the...
Curse is broken, because this year or this week or month or however it feels, honestly, we're talking about a film that starts with R and a film that starts with either L or T, depending on your language. Now, Will Ashton, he could not be here this week, but he did leave us a letter stating that he would be going upstate and that a brief holiday from him should be welcome. Yeah, I guess I should have read that in the British accent. But yeah, and you're probably wondering, wait. Sam is my guy for Extra Milestone. He usually hosts this stuff. And that's true.
He's probably already very different.
Yes, I do things a little bit differently, as we've all established. But yeah, I'm giving Sam a much deserved break because, man, you've been ramping up a lot of episodes, a lot of
Yeah.
extra milestones. So we can catch up after we had an extended hiatus of the show. So Sam, what's been on Extra Milestone recently for the listeners who haven't heard it yet, or they need to go back in time a bit? What have you been up to?
Been up to quite a lot actually. In just the past month since our Pinocchio episode, we've been really increasing production on these Extra Milestone episodes. So just after that one, I was going to do an episode with Adonis Gonzalez. I've actually recorded that one, so that one will be coming out shortly, in which we talk about the Grapes of Wrath and Terror of Mechagodzilla and How to Train Your Dragon. That one was a lot of fun. I can't wait for y'all to hear that one. And then just before that, however, John and I, the gentleman hosting this very show, we talked about Seven Chances, but one of Buster Keaton's greatest achievements in the silent comedy realm.
That was fun.
That was a ton of fun. I really like that one.
Do you like Buster Keaton, Emily?
Yeah.
I like him. He's just one of the actors I haven't dived into his filmography. I feel very embarrassed to say that.
That's okay. I'm the same way with a bunch of silent artists, but Buster Keaton is like one of the few that I actually, I re-listened to that episode because I was like, man, I want to rewatch all of his films all over again. And there's a bunch I still haven't seen. So
yeah, it's hard to go wrong with Buster Keaton. So I'm actually jealous that you get to experience the glory for the first time. So yeah, lots of fun to be found. And then after that, last week, as a matter of fact, I got together with my old friend, Jason Reed from the Anyway, That's All I Got days, one of my greatest friends to this day. And we had a awesome trifecta, one of my favorite podcasts I've ever done, where we talked about Breathless, Eyes Without a Face, and Deep Red, which was hell of a trifecta of conversations that I really loved recording, and the responses for that have been very positive as well. So this show is going strong, and it's not slowing down. So settle in.
Right. And so like I said before, we got two films, so we're just going to jump right into it. The first one is the big one, Rebecca. It's one of the more famous Hitchcock films. It usually shows up on a list of his best movies. Although, he's made so many masterpieces, it's kind of hard to narrow down. And I could imagine a top 10 Hitchcock list, maybe not having Rebecca on it. I guess it's possible.
I suppose.
Yeah. And it's now celebrating 80 years since it came out in 1940. And if I'm not wrong, I think all three of us had already seen Rebecca. So this one's a rewatch.
John, you are wrong. I had never seen it.
You had never seen it. Okay, I couldn't remember if it was one of us who had not. I know, Em, you have definitely seen it.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, we're ready to talk about it. So this will be a first watch. Yeah, it's always exciting. There have been plenty of times where I've gotten to watch a show for extra, or a movie for Extra Milestone for the first time, and been like, I'm so glad this happened.
Yeah.
And then, speaking of which, we have another film coming up that I saw for the first time. And who had already seen Le Trou, if anybody?
Just your old friend Sam.
Right. This was your rewatch. Okay. So here we go. Let's start with Rebecca. This should be good because this is a pretty well-known film. It is an Alfred Hitchcock film that came out in 1940. It was his first American film. And I did want to point out that this is our third film that we've talked about this year, an Extra Milestone, that came out in 1940.
Oh, yes.
And we're about to do another one with Grapes of Wrath, technically.
Yeah.
And so, the other two were His Girl Friday and Pinocchio. So apparently 1940 was just a terrific year in film, I guess.
It wasn't a bad one. Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose there are more to come. Like I said, Hitchcock, he is a British director. And in the 1930s, he had made, up until this point, movies like The 39 Steps, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Lady Vanishes. I think that was 1938.
Yep.
And so what's interesting about Rebecca is that he teamed up with one of the most, I don't know, not hottest producers, but hot in terms of a hot streak. Can I say it that way? I don't want to gross. But David O. Selznick, who, this is 1940, so right after Gone with the Wind becomes basically the most successful movie of all time. Still is in terms of ticket sales. And it's kind of funny because I think Sam, how many times have we mentioned Gone with the Wind so far?
It's
on Extra
almost every single episode it comes
So
up
weird.
for some reason. Just Gone with the Wind has stretched its tendrils into so much
Yeah.
of the cinematic landscape.
We're like the opposite of HBO Max.
Yeah. Acknowledging the existence of Gone with the Wind left and right on the extra milestone. Yeah, and we almost like if it was on the poll for December, I think Young Frankenstein won.
It was.
And also I think it counted for January because that was when it went wide.
Mhm.
But yeah, so we very well could have talked about it, but I think we've brought it up incidentally so much that we practically covered the territory, I feel. Plus it's a huge can of worms. It wouldn't have been the easiest thing to do.
That would have been like a 4-hour episode probably.
Most likely.
So Rebecca is based on a novel by the British author Daphne du Maurier.
Yes.
And the novel itself was also called Rebecca. So I think you call that an eponymous novel. Mm-hmm. And from what I can tell, I haven't read this book. One of you can chime in if you have. But apparently this is pretty faithful, minus a few changes Hitchcock made here and there because of censorship codes, which I want to ask each of you about concerning specifically one of the, I don't know if she's considered a main character, but kind of a secondary character.
Yeah.
But yeah, wrapping up through it, this movie is 130 minutes long, which I thought, did you guys think this was kind of long for a black and white kind of thriller movie? Or Emily, how would you describe this movie? Do you think thriller is a good moniker?
Yeah, psychological thriller. I think that would be a good way of putting it.
I think so, yeah. Because it's hard, because it doesn't have like the raw suspense of most Hitchcock films, but it gets pretty close, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, 130 minutes, pretty long, although not as long as Gone with the Wind, obviously. And it didn't cost nearly as much money. I think Gone with the Wind cost about $4 million. Rebecca cost $1.2 million, which is still a lot. That's about how much Pinocchio cost right before this.
Yeah.
And yeah, Rebecca was a box office success. It made almost triple its production budget. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards.
Ooh.
It won 2 of them. Best Picture, Best Cinematography in black and white by the prolific George Barnes. What do you make of this Oscar success for the movie, Sam? Do you think it got more than it deserved, about what it deserved, not enough?
Nomination wise, I think it got just about what it deserved. I think it's to jump ahead a little bit. I quite like this movie, having not seen it before. I got really into it, and I could see this must have been really unusual for the time, just when it comes to this level of like suspense and layers and stuff that we'll get into. So I can see why it got a lot. I looked up the actual ceremony. I believe the 13th Academy Awards is what it was. That was actually quite a significant year, because that was I didn't know this. That was the first year when they did the thing where they have the names of the winners in envelopes, where they're keeping it secret until the very last minute. That was very interesting to find out. And also lost Alfred Hitchcock, 5-time Best Director nominee. This was the first time. 0-time winner, which is just baffling to think about.
Absolutely ridiculous.
You know who he lost to? John Ford, director of The Grapes of Wrath. How funny is that? Came out the same month. And that movie, The Grapes of Wrath, also took home the award for Best Supporting Actress for Jane Darwell as Ma Jode, who, oh gosh, let me look up her name. Mrs. Danvers from this movie. I forget the actress.
Judith Anderson?
Judith Anderson lost that award. So it's they're sort of interconnected in that way. So I think there were some that I certainly would give it to. I imagine we can get a little bit more into that, but glad it got a nominations. I think it probably could have stood to win a few more, especially in hindsight.
Yeah, I think that's the case. All right, let's get into this movie.
Announcing the return of the most glamorous motion picture ever made, David O. Selznick and Alfred Hitchcock bring you the Grand Slam prize winner that made motion picture history. Winner of the Academy Award, voted by America's critics as the best picture of the year. And now, as a result of a national poll, winning new honors as audiences throughout the country vote to see it again. The Selznick Studios' successor to Gone with the Wind, Rebecca, brought to the screen with all the warmth and emotion that made millions of readers acclaim Daphne du Maurier's bestseller as the most exciting love story of our time. The fascinating Max de Winter lives on the screen in the person of Laurence Olivier.
Why, it's Max de Winter.
How do you do? The shy, unsophisticated young girl who dared to follow in the footsteps of the beautiful Rebecca is portrayed by lovely Joan Fontaine.
How could I ask you to love me when I knew you loved Rebecca still? Whenever you touched me, I knew you were comparing me with Rebecca.
What is the mystery of Rebecca? What dread secret is hidden within the silent walls of Manderley?
It's not only in this room. It's in all the rooms in the house. You can almost hear it now. Do you think the dead come back and watch the living?
Tell me, is Mrs. Van Hopper a friend of yours or just a relation?
No, she's my employer. I'm what is known as a paid companion.
I didn't know companionship could be bought.
There is mystery, love, and laughter in Rebecca, the motion picture still unsurpassed for suspenseful romance.
I'm calling this segment, it's a little goofy, the dumbwaiter pitch.
Mm-hmm.
I want to start getting into, because we want to be a little bit more efficient. I want to talk about the general plot and the themes and how you first watched it, but I want to let each of you talk about that on your own terms. So I figured, like, what's a good question to ask here? So if you came across Sam Noland circa like 1 month ago,
Yes.
and you had to describe Rebecca to him, somebody who's never seen it, maybe someone who's never seen Hitchcock, starting with you, Emily, how would you describe this movie to somebody? Because I'm assuming you would want them to watch it.
Yes, I would. I'd say it's a Hitchcock thriller about this woman who marries a rich guy, and when she moves into the house, she finds out that his wife had died and under suspicious circumstances, and I guess the maid is a lesbian.
Oh boy!
And
Already.
That is a selling point. If ever
I
there
think
was
so.
one.
I think so.
Yes.
But I don't want to give away the ending, so I'll stop there.
Right on. Yeah, that's not giving away too much for sure, and we'll be sure not to do any spoilers. But yes, this is one of those movies where you're like, clearly something's going on.
Yes.
That's underneath the surface. A lot of subtext in this movie, a lot of symbolism, a lot of little tricks with the filmmaking to sort of get very subtle points across. But Sam, okay, you've got to pitch this thing, and it's going to be tough. You're talking to somebody. Let's say this person, they don't like classic.
Let's say
movies. They're not in.
Let's say it's also me from a month ago.
I like that. All right.
Yeah.
And Emily is not okay with this person who does not like classic movies.
I don't.
I join your distaste.
That is a whole tangent. I know so many people like that, and it always drives me nuts. Because it's never a good reason, is it? That's the worst part.
No.
Each their own, I suppose. It's like more for us, even though that doesn't make sense.
That makes literally no sense, but yes.
All right. But all right, Sam, what's your pitch to young Sam?
My dumbwaiter pitch is I would say, because some of the listeners have remarked, and rightfully so, and I take great pride in this, that I have a little bit of an eccentric theatrical way of reviewing movies and presenting them. So this is what I would say, and this is not getting into any of the plot specifically, but I would say it is a hastily occurring affair, or no, not affair. That implies something extramarital, but like a passionate romance between a woman who is in love with this man and a man with an entire graveyard's worth of skeletons in his closet. And the most notable of those skeletons is his very recently deceased wife, Rebecca, hence the title. That's kind of the bread and butter of this movie, is the way that this character we never see, we never even find out what she looks like, really, how she is still lingering in the what should we say, in the spirit of this household and of the people who inhabit it. And it's very, very alluring all the way through and very exciting to watch.
That was much better.
I agree. Yeah, that was something that definitely struck me the first time I saw this, which is funny because when I first saw this, it was because it was for a film class, and we were debating Mrs. Danvers, and we were debating like the intention behind that character, and it was fun. But we definitely had that guy in our class who, holy cow, he loved hearing himself talk. I'll tell you that much. I won't name names, but
it was me, wasn't it?
No, but his email address is in the show notes. So
it was cinemaholics.podcast@gmail.com.
Cinemaholics.what?
Cinemaholics.com.
But yeah, no, this is a very, very fun movie to pick apart. I guess if I had to pitch it to somebody, I'd say that it's like it's prototypical Hitchcock. It's him it's early in his career. It's still him finding his voice, or at least not finding his voice, but like really starting to flex his muscles, I guess is probably a better, because at this point he had already made some good movies, and you could just sort of feel the confidence coming through the filmmaking here. He's making like bolder gestures with the camera. So if you're somebody who likes Hitchcock, this is an easy recommend. I mean, even if you're not a completist, this really informs like all of the different things that he was good at with Rebecca. This has like one of the first characters he ever made who, even though this is based on a book, he has that character who is sort of like, seems innocent, seems like everything for this person is going well, but they feel guilty about something, or they feel like the nature itself is out to get them, or a specific character or somebody is out to get them. And it plays with that perspective of what it's like to be written off or to feel guilty by someone, and you don't really have control over it, that like paranoia. And I think that of all of Hitchcock's films, if you like Psycho, like if you like that deeper text about sex and violence, Rebecca is it's a very pure expression of that stuff that Hitchcock was always sort of wrestling with in his movies, specifically Vertigo. But I think in Rebecca, it's like a really good picture of it. But how would you compare Rebecca with some of the other Hitchcock films for somebody who is curious how they interplay?
I feel like it's more dramatic to me than maybe the other ones, which may have something to do with the source material. But other than that, I mean, like you said, a lot of it is like, I don't know, like the way that he tells the story is very similar to his other things. That's what I would say.
Yeah, there is like a through line for him with his movies. But yeah, I'm curious, Sam, because you've seen a lot of Hitchcock films. How does this compare?
You know,
I feel like I don't know. I don't know how you feel about this.
Not as many as you might think. I have this weird thing where I've seen I would say a respectable number of Hitchcock movies, but actually a lot of the bigger ones I've just missed. I've never seen North by Northwest. That gives you an idea. I've seen Psycho. That's one of like my 5 favorite movies ever. Vertigo, of course. Rear Window, of course. Haven't seen The Birds, which I found out upon doing research is actually adapted from a story by the same author, which is fascinating.
Did you watch Birdemic by mistake?
I did not watch Birdemic by mistake.
Hitchcock.
There's you can only watch Birdemic by mistake. That's the only way it could ever possibly work out.
Fair enough.
But no, yeah, I found out this was the second of 3 adaptations that Hitchcock did of Daphne du Maurier. The first one was Jamaica Inn, which I actually have seen, and that one was quite fun. But yeah, I think Rebecca is interesting because it's not for most of the movie. I would say like the first half to 2/3 at least. It is not based on a mystery. Like it's not really up in the air what something is. Like sure there's some ambiguity or anything, but it's not like we're trying to figure out who killed someone or who got killed or something like that. It seems pretty cut and dry at first, and it seems like for a while at least, it's just going to be this sort of journey of this couple as they wrestle with essentially not really their own demons, but in a way it sort of is, just wrestling with essentially this guy's ex-wife who happened to die under mysterious circumstances. And I like how most of that first part of the movie, where everything seems pretty obvious what's going on, it's mostly told through the perspective of what's his name? Maxim is the character's name. Maxim's
you think it's told through his perspective?
No. I think it's told through his new wife's perspective. And I was trying to think.
I misheard you. I was like, really?
No. I know it was a long-winded sentence, but yeah, I realized a little bit into the movie. Does she have a name? I don't think she does. Yeah.
Well, she didn't have a name in the novel either.
Yes, which is fascinating. For the record, I have not read the novel, but I'd be very curious to. I'm wondering what that choice was about. But I think it goes to it goes to really hammer in that identity she has as this guy's second wife, the second Mrs. What's the last name? De Winter. I'm so bad with names. Everyone knows this. Yeah. Character names are just the last thing that I would put on a resume if such a thing were to exist. But yeah, the second Mrs. De Winter.
I want to hire this guy, but I don't know his name.
I know my own name very well, but regardless of that, yeah. So it's really told through her perspective for most of the movie, certainly for the first 2 or so acts of it. And it's really, really gripping to see how she just has to deal with the fact that I am sort of going to be judged against this woman who I've never met, who I know practically nothing about. But even though there's not a ghost in this movie, it really is like Rebecca's ghost is just in every single frame, sort of hanging over it, to the point where there's a scene where Laurence Olivier and Joan Fontaine, I'm just going to say the actor names, are watching like some home movies that they've recorded on film. And I'm just waiting, just biting my tongue, waiting for Rebecca's name to come up. And it never takes long. So it's really about how it's just always going to be there. This idea that there was someone else who you're sort of competing with beyond the grave. And so that was really fascinating, especially as someone who hasn't really had, to be perfectly honest, a ton of experience with this kind of thing. So that was fascinating to see. And I'm curious.
We know you haven't married Joan Fontaine, but it's all right. She'll come around.
Not yet.
Yeah. I specifically in that scene really like when he literally steps in front of the light of their happy memories. And I'm like, oh, Hitchcock, you. I bet that was in your screenplay from the start.
If you'll notice, all throughout the movie, it's everywhere where Joan Fontaine is in shadows, in the shadow of Rebecca, so to speak. Yeah. I'm like, I see what you did there.
Well, that's how I've always interpreted the decision, going back to the novel, of her not having a name. It's kind of, I can sense the author is really trying to get across how in any marriage, it feels like your life is being like pushed into another person's. And it also really fits Hitchcock's work, because when he does any sort of movie that has romance in it, it's always about power. It's always about control and a submissive person being taken advantage of by somebody with more power. And I don't know, I've always found that to be like a very striking thing for a film director in 1940 or even in 1960. It is pretty interesting how he's been subverting those expectations. And like he was making paranoia thrillers about, man, it really is awkward when you marry somebody who used to be with somebody else. Like even if they weren't married before, if they had like a passionate romance with somebody before you marry them, there is like a real tension there that you understand for sure, like once you get to be that age. But yeah, that was my big takeaway. But Emily, did you think there was any deeper meaning there? Do you think that there was something about like marriage and the perspective of this character that really informs like why this movie kind of resonates with people?
I mean, simply, I think it is just because of the time. I think like people of the novel, like people view women once they are married to a man that like she is just Mrs. De Winter and like whatever her own identity doesn't really matter. It's in relation to her husband. So I don't know. I feel like that wasn't entirely uncommon, but I think it is definitely a deliberate choice never to mention her name when we mention the first name of Rebecca like all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really like Sam said, it drives in the point that like how is she supposed to replace this person when, you know, her name is not embroidered on anything or like how does she make this place her own?
There are R's all over the place, almost to a comical degree, to the point where, and again, we're not giving anything away, but there's something that happens at the end of this movie, and it was Selznick's idea for there to be a giant R that created sort of organically, and Hitchcock was like, no, we're not doing that. And I will say this, good choice. That would have been really distracting if an R just appeared in a place where you would not see an R in this very specific circumstance. So I could see why someone would think of the idea for like 3 seconds, but the fact that he didn't discard it after that only goes to show that Hitchcock was the one with the right idea when it came to that ending. And
it worked out because Mask of Zorro took care of it. It would come back eventually.
So it did.
We haven't talked about, not really, one of the most striking performances here, because I think we can agree, Laurence Olivier, who at this point had done Wuthering Heights, and Joan Fontaine was a big star. Hitchcock had a thing for having a lot of stars in his movies.
No, actually, I'm gonna stop you, John. She actually wasn't a big star at this point. That was kind of
a bigger star.
Yeah,
Olivia de Havilland.
That was a little bit
of a fascinating because she was in a ton of films.
Olivia de Havilland was, yeah. As a matter of fact, you know what movie Olivia de Havilland was in? Gone with the Wind.
Oh boy,
it keeps coming back around. But no,
Today's her birthday, actually, too. She's 104.
No kidding. That's today. That's fascinating. I love it. Happy birthday, Olivia de Havilland. If you're listening, I sincerely hope you are.
That is interesting. Yeah. I mean, I don't know too much about Fontaine's career before this, but yeah, I guess this was like the first movie where she really got like a ton of awards acclaim. So that's probably the case because she had been in like little things for sure. Yeah. I think Suspicion probably came out after this, didn't it?
It did. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's when did she win that Oscar?
I think so. I actually don't know.
Huh. I'd have to look into that too.
I will look that up. But that was a spot of contention because Laurence Olivier wanted Vivien Leigh to play Mrs. De Winter, who he was dating at the time. So there was a little bit of nepotism involved.
But it works because you can tell that he and Fontaine have this weird tension where it does feel like he's acting with her.
And did you read the what Joan Fontaine went through on the set?
Not in detail, but I heard, it was pretty rough. Apparently, it was nothing with Hitchcock in particular.
But actually,
was it Hitchcock? Because I thought that they made another movie together.
What happened was that Laurence Olivier was a little bitter about not having Vivien Leigh be able to play this other character. So he was sort of like, just not the nicest person to Joan Fontaine at all. Hitchcock found out about this and decided, like the Alfred Hitchcock he is, there's no other way I could think to describe it, told everyone on the set to be kind of mean to her. And so as a way to sort of like Stanley Kubrick after him to get that really on edge performance out of her. And as good as that performance is, that really it really doesn't feel like they had to go there,
Maybe I was thinking that she was doing more work with Selznick. That's probably how I have it confused. But yeah, I mean, her career definitely was pretty storied. I know that she had issues with like being typecast, and this role had a lot to do with that, and Suspicion did too. So I guess that
she did win for Suspicion, by the way.
She did. Okay,
a year later.
Good for her.
Yeah,
good for her. But yeah, it is a little rude that they antagonize this poor woman who is doing a really incredible performance. And I was going to mention to Judith Anderson. I said Sanders because I had George Sanders on my mind. Judith Anderson as Miss Danvers, I guess so. Oh, George Sanders in this movie. We'll get to him.
Yes.
But yes, so Mrs. Danvers, this is a very key performance. So Emily, what was your take on this character? You kind of mentioned before, and at this point, we'll say like we're not going to spoil the ending of this movie, but we are going to talk about things that happen kind of in the middle. So if you don't want to know any of that, you might want to take this as a chance to cut out of this episode or this part of the episode and move on to the Le Trou section. But yeah, Emily, what is your hot take for Mrs. Danvers? No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I've read so much about Rebecca and like when it comes to studies of LGBT like representation in old Hollywood. So I've always like, I think even before I watched Rebecca, kind of came at it knowing the subtext of it. And then like watching the scenes that they include in the Celluloid Closet, the documentary, like it just feels very overt that Mrs. Danvers was in love with Rebecca before this happened, which I like.
Yeah. It's an interesting read because you don't even have to determine whether or not it was reciprocated, because it still works thematically that this is coming from like a forbidden. I mean, here's the thing. I could see somebody being like, you're reading too much into it with modern eyes, but she literally caresses the woman's underwear. And I understand.
That was something.
I understand that like, some people who might push back against that is like, well, in the book it was a little different. She was more of a jealous mother figure. But I think that's why Hitchcock changed it. I think he wanted it to be more ambiguous because that fits his themes a little bit better. I think the jealous mother thing doesn't quite as easily fit into the paranoia of this movie. And I think that the character at the very beginning is a better subtext that he's already playing with when it comes to the sort of overbearing in-law figure. Even though she's not an in-law necessarily, but like, she's somebody who she establishes in the very beginning of the movie, which is kind of like this Cinderella romance story 10 years before the Disney version would come out. And she's so overbearing. She's so, commanding of our main character who doesn't even have a name. And we get that sense early on that she's very submissive, and that helps us understand why certain things are going to happen the way they do. It's because she feels like she's in the shadow of all of these people striving to get out through hopefully romance with a man, which feels a little bit, I don't know, like it's probably not going to work.
Yeah.
But all right. On that note, Mrs. Danvers, I don't want to move away from this. Sam, did you have a take on Mrs. Danvers? Do you think those readings are fair?
They're not only fair, they're actually well documented. I as I understand it, Alfred Hitchcock and maybe Selznick too actually wanted to overtly establish that the character was a lesbian. And so, but of course, because the production code is effing stupid, they said, oh no, we can't have that. And so they just had to do it all in subtext. But you know what? It almost works better that way. And I think Mrs. Danvers is kind of just the cherry on top that makes this movie what it is. Because if you'll notice, I found out, I read this afterwards and it clicked in my head as I thought back. They wanted to make it like, they wanted to do this effect in such a way that it looked like Mrs. Danvers doesn't walk. It's more like she glides through the hallways of the mansion.
Yeah, kind of like Mary Poppins.
Or what I thought of was in the original live action French version of Beauty and the Beast, La Belle et la Bête, by Jean Cocteau, where Belle in that movie literally like glides angelically through the hallway, and it's this really...
Well, Beauty and the Beast, like the Disney version, I think steals some stuff from Rebecca. Kind of like the Gothic feel, the idea of the West Wing being sort of this like artifact of another time. There's a lot of Beauty and the Beast ripping going on there. I mean, Rebecca's inspired a lot of things. Yeah, I guess we should be clear.
Not the least of which is Citizen Kane, only a year later. A lot of similarities with Citizen Kane.
I was thinking that in the very first shot. I was like, oh man, I forgot, because it's been a while. I was like, man, this really does have such a similar vibe. Yeah.
Right down to like, the big mansion and the extramarital affairs and a certain thing that happens towards the end, which we're still going to be a little coy about, but you could see the similarities there. You could see how Orson Welles would have watched Rebecca and been like, I like these ideas. I might write them into my Citizen Kane script or something like that. And yeah, I think it makes, so you just feel like Miss Danvers could just be like literally just sort of hovering in the wings at any time, ready to show up and plant an idea into Joan Fontaine's head. And just seeing just sort of this chain of events unfold where they're trying to settle into a happy marriage and they just can't, makes for a lot of tension that I think is not to be underestimated. So that made for a lot of it, and I think the movie really wouldn't be the same without Judith. Is it Anderson?
Anderson.
Yes, Judith Anderson as Mrs. Danvers. Really,
I like
really
to think that
one hell of a character.
because my sister, she named her firstborn son Anderson, and I like to think that it was after Judith Anderson. She won't admit it, and she thinks I'm crazy or something. I don't know. Unrelated.
She might be onto something there.
You know, Emily, Samuel, I have not told you what I think of this movie, and
Okay.
I've got something interesting to tell you both.
Oh, Nelly.
I have some very significant criticisms of this movie
Oh,
to the
my
point where
goodness.
I can. Yeah, Emily is
I'm gonna
calling
have to
the police
leave.
right now. There's something about this movie that rubs me the wrong way in a few key areas. I find it really fun to watch, and I think that it is really, really meticulously well made. It's Hitchcock working at a great level as always.
Wade.
I'm judging it against other Hitchcock films. I just think that it does feel like three different movies, and I half like it and I half don't. I like the aspect of you do sort of see this woman's in this like whirlwind romance in the very beginning, but I don't think there are enough red flags that really key here in on what she's getting into. There are definitely red flags with De Winter, that he is a toxic boy. I think that he has a lot of behaviors that a lot of people watching will see coming and being like, why would you put up with that? That is not what a gentleman would do. He literally proposes to her from another room, and it's treated as the most flippant thing ever. Like, yes, you're going to marry me, of course. Like, it's very, and I guess I do like that the movie finally gets going for real when we get to the Manderley, and I think all that stuff works well. And then it's just that last third where it changes into a different movie. We are going to get in a little bit more plot specific stuff with the ending, but
Okay.
I just think that when it does the His Girl Friday thing, where it turns into another movie, where it turns into like a murder mystery. We got to go here. We got to go there. This person said this. And I don't care about that stuff. Like, I missed the suspense and the paranoia and my favorite scene, which is like the costume ball. And when they're on the ledge and is she going to jump? All that stuff is so much more interesting to me than trying to absolve this man of something that feels forced. Like, it feels like they're trying to make him not a bad person. And by doing that, they have to simplify Rebecca. They have to make her evil, like weirdly evil, to the point of like almost parody. And it keeps going and going. And so even though I like the final shot, I think it's a great ending, a great way to wrap things up. That's my criticism, is I just think it's too clear cut about who Rebecca is and how all this stuff happened. And the mystery is not as satisfying as the journey to get there for me. So that's just my opinion. Emily, Sam, go ahead. Tell me why I need to quit my job and just run away.
Surely that's a bit of an exaggeration. That's interesting that you put it that way, that it simplifies Rebecca, because the way I look at it is that she's sort of not really been a character up to this point, or that's not really the right way to say it, but it's
she's been a presence.
She's been a presence,
like a lingering, yeah.
almost like Harry Lime, speaking of Orson Welles, from the beginning of The Third Man, where all we know is just like what this guy has done and sort of the trail of, death that he's left, and it's a long time before we actually see him. In this, of course, we never actually end up seeing Rebecca, because of course she's dead. Spoiler alert, that's not the twist, is that she was alive this whole time. I think it would be a little bit more off-putting if that were the case, and a little bit
for sure.
Yeah, just not the most clever twist. But yeah, so if we're getting into the plot, which again, they're show notes specifying that kind of thing, what we find out is that Rebecca has been found at the bottom of the river, which is weird considering that Maxim de Winter identified her corpse like a year ago. So all of a sudden, all this crazy stuff is being called into question, and we find out that and this happened a little fast. So correct me if I'm wrong, but it was that Maxim wanted to kill Rebecca, right? Is that basically what it was?
It's ambiguous. He kind of is like, I wanted to kill it, but he wouldn't have done it. But she was trying to goad him into doing it because she wanted to ruin him, basically, because she knew she was going to die. And that's why it gets into the parody for me, where I'm just like, what? Like, why? What made this person so evil? Like, it just seems like, why would she hate him this much? It's not established. And it's just, and I also, sorry, this is a tangent, I guess, but like, it just robs Mrs. De Winter. I hate to call her that, but it robs her of her agency. Yeah. But like her agency, like she doesn't discover this. She doesn't find out. She doesn't seek the truth. She doesn't even seem to really suspect it. She's just kind of clueless about it. And then he's the one who has to bring it to her. And then he gets bailed out. I don't know. There's something about the plotting here that it just, I don't know. It just didn't thrill me, I guess.
I can see why you would say that, but I think it makes it, I think it makes her all the more interesting that she just has, we've seen on multiple occasions that she does not like being compared to Rebecca. Like she's not a huge fan of this presence hanging over her. I'm sure I'm no doubt if you asked her about it, she would say like, yes, I would rather that we just move on from Rebecca. Could we please? So it's not like she's actively seeking out the truth or anything because she thinks she already knows the truth, which is that Rebecca just died somehow and that was the end of it. And now we move on, but no one around her is willing to move on. We see that again and again throughout the story. And so I think it makes it all the more interesting from this character's perspective, from the second Mrs. De Winter, let's call her, from her perspective, where it's almost it's kind of nightmarish where she finally realizes I've been roped into something even more complicated and what's the word? Just dramatic than I even realized before. And it was intensely dramatic beforehand. She goes along with it, but before she realizes that there's more to it. Like I think it all goes to what she's going through, and it really, honestly, it frankly kind of frustrates me that we don't know her name, because I think that would have, like if we had found it out at the end, like if it was some sort of a Kill Bill thing, I think that would have really put a nice button on the story.
Well, there's a rumor that Hitchcock wanted to name her at one point Daphne after the author, but then decided it wouldn't make sense. He didn't want to upend the book like that, but
yeah, it would have been a little confusing, like the implications, but even if just a regular name, if they had given it to her, that would have been neat. But alas, that is not what we got. Even so, I think it's all part of this journey, and I think when it gets to the conclusion that it does, I think there's this catharsis that has been long overdue, that I think is really powerful. I did not see these weird storytelling snafus that John did, for the record, although I do. Right. I can kind of see what you're getting at, but it didn't bother me in the least.
All right, Emily, why am I wrong? Why am I misreading Rebecca?
Get him.
I mean, I can't tell you that you are wrong in your perception of it. I think like every time I've seen it, I've always just been struck by the way that it can take a different turn in terms of the plot. Like most movies or stories, it seems super linear and like there's no revelations that seem out of place or like taken in a different direction. I feel like this one does. And I love a murder mystery. And so like it kind of does veer into that in the later part of it. But I don't know. I love the ending, and I feel like you kind of have to get to the point where it does in order to get there so that it feels as warranted, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because here's my thing, John, with what you're saying, like maybe it's an unusual turn. I'll grant you that. It's not the most predictable thing. But I'm trying to think, like, what would the alternative be? Just a whole movie of Rebecca briefly coming up over and over again until eventually they just sort of stop talking about her?
I definitely don't think that's an issue at all. I actually really like that she keeps coming up. I think there was something sort of like undervalued about letting her be just like, if not a decent person, somebody who was deserving of all this adoration. And I think there are two directions, where one of them is that she lives up to that. She really was this like beautiful person that everyone loved, and they just can't get over her. And there's something that speaks true to the human experience about that sometimes no matter what you do, you are going to be in the shadow of someone. And in that situation, you probably just need to not be in a relationship with that person because they haven't moved on yet. And that to me would have, I don't want to criticize what a movie is, for what I wish it was, but I'm just giving an example of something that I probably would have engaged with a little bit more thoughtfully. Whereas in this case, I just don't understand the point of like, I just think it's simplistic to present this story as it's okay, she was evil, like all of this stuff, your paranoia was all sort of based, if anything, on something really, I don't know. I just think it lays it on pretty extra thick when it doesn't need to. Again, I am trying to, this is the second time I've seen it. I don't know how I'll interpret it the third, but I am trying to like poke at it a little bit. And, even despite the fact that it's such a good movie, I think we can all agree on that. I do think it is an extra milestone. But I just think there is something weird about this movie's point, its message, that I don't think is as elegantly told as some of other Hitchcock's films, which is why if I was making a top 10, I would not include this one.
Sure. That's somewhat understandable. I can see that. I want to ask you a question about that. But first, it occurs to me now, John and I, we've talked about how we first watched this, but Emily, I'm very curious. What is your actual experience with this movie? You said you've seen it several times. Like, what was the first time, and how has your view on it grown over time?
That is a good question, because I honestly don't remember.
That's even better.
I feel like, well, my typical viewing experience with older movies is like, oh, it's on TCM, so now I'm going to watch it. So I think it was like a Hitchcock series that they did, and that's when I saw it the first time. But I hadn't seen it since I watched The Celluloid Closet like a couple years ago. So I was like super excited to rewatch it and like see if the interpretations of Mrs. Danvers is like true when you watch it all the way through, and it definitely was. And it's weird because the only parts that I vividly remember are like in the beginning when they're in the house, and then like once they leave and they have this like trial thing, I like completely blocked those parts out and completely forgot that they happened. So maybe that is a testament to what John is saying, that it's like goes in a completely weird direction that your brain ends up blocking out.
Yeah. It's certainly a clearly sectioned off like third act of the movie. But it comes about in such a way that I'm curious by something you said, John, which is the adoration of Rebecca. Because as we find out in sort of a bit of a surprising line of dialogue, Mr. De Winter, Laurence Olivier, says in a passionate, emotional outburst to the second, Mrs. De Winter says, I hated Rebecca. And that came as...
I love that line, by the way, because when he delivers it, she's smiling and she's trying to hold it back.
She's trying not to. But I think it's very interesting because I actually, when I heard that line, I was a little bit surprised at first. But then as I thought back to everything that had happened beforehand, I thought to myself, actually, yeah, he never really expressed like any sort of like mourning or longing or anything of that nature. It's just that he can't not think about her, regardless of whether or not
he feels
liked her.
guilty.
So I think that's interesting that even though it doesn't come as a surprise that this specific person, her husband, was not fond of Rebecca, that it just seems natural to me that the movie would go in the direction that you're taking issue with, which is that maybe she was up to something more mischievous than we first thought. It seemed like a natural continuation to me.
On this level, the movie absolutely works because it brilliantly demonstrates how there is a thin line between grief and guilt. And you learn in this moment that their love was real, or this like romance they had. Like, he really does care about her. He's not just trying to replace his wife. Like, he clearly seems to have affection for her, even though you could argue the performances get in the way of that a little bit. But I do think that like it is sort of getting across how this stuff was in her head, this sense of like she could never, you know, he's still in love with this woman, and that it seems to be getting in the way of their relationship. But what's really getting in the way of the relationship is something else they need to hash out together. And I think that works pretty well. I guess we can now get into the final part of this and just say, okay, brass tacks, is this an extra milestone? I already said yes. And I think what sums up what makes this an extra milestone for me is that there's a scene in this movie where she's been tricked by Mrs. Danvers to wear a dress that Rebecca wore not long before she died. And our main character, is in this dress, and she's walking down the stairs, and you know what's going to happen. The audience has figured it out by now.
Yeah.
That she's,
it actually happens a lot quicker than I was assuming. I thought the party would go on okay for a little bit and then something would come up. But no, just immediately,
right off the bat,
Laurence Olivier sees her wearing the dress and says, "Get out of here with that thing. I cannot believe it." And there's just this huge row that erupts.
The tension of her walking up to him, his back is turned to her, and you as the audience know what's going to happen, but then it all turns on us. It turns on us the source of that anger. And it's just it's a brilliant movie when it comes to perspectives and how we can misread people. And even though I have my qualms with it, I definitely still think it's absolutely worth a watch. I think it's very crowd pleasing. It's very useful and productive to watch if you want any sort of sense of films at the time. And like we've said, it was so influential in a lot of its filmmaking and its execution. And it is a voluptuous movie for sure. But all right, Emily, have you changed your mind? Do you still like this movie?
Yes, I do a lot. I definitely think it's an extra milestone for me. I just think it's beautiful to watch. The cinematography's great. I love the score. It's definitely my favorite Joan Fontaine performance. And personally, it's one of my favorite Hitchcocks. But that's just me. But I definitely do think that it's like a really good movie to watch if you haven't watched many of like older movies, just because it is a Hitchcock. So like you feel the suspense, especially towards the end and like the ending. And I just love the last scene so much. It really takes you into the chaos of it in ways that like I didn't know were possible with the camera at that time, just because film catches on fire. But it definitely gives a cool effect at the end.
Yeah, I was wondering that too. Like, how did they film that? Yes, I'm a fan of Joan Fontaine as well. And she lived a long life. She only passed away in the last decade, which is fascinating stuff. She actually lived not too far away from where I am right now. So,
small world after all.
Sam Nolan.
Yes.
Hey, I had nothing to do with it, okay?
I said no such thing. I just said it was a small world. Do you hear it, audience? Do you hear John wrenching my mouth open and shoving the words in? I can't believe it, John.
Today, dear diary, Sam accused me of murder on the extra milestone. Again.
Captain's log, John is manufacturing secrets out of thin air. I do not know what to do about it. Kirk out. Anyway, what?
All right, Sam. What is your denouement on Rebecca?
My denouement, yes. It would be weird if I said it wasn't an extra milestone, what with all the praise I've heaped upon it along with the two of you. Yeah, I was really impressed by this. I watched it earlier today, and I wouldn't say I had like huge expectations, so it's not like it had any sort of huge thing to live up to, but I had certainly heard about it, and I was interested to see like the only Hitchcock movie that won Best Picture, and it turns out kind of makes sense. It's definitely of the big Hitchcock movies, it's like the most Oscar-y, if you know what I'm saying. Like it's the most just sort of, I don't mean to say this in a like a denigrating way, but just sort of the most straightforwardly dramatic, but in a really good way. You mentioned that it's a good way to sort of get into the time period, and I think you're absolutely right, because it's just a lot of storytelling techniques that were used at the time just being used to like their absolute maximum, just playing it to the nines and making something really special. And I look forward to watching it many more times in the future. It is indeed an extra milestone for all the reasons we've mentioned and more.
All right. That is Rebecca. Definitely worth checking out. It's hard to check out unless you have the Criterion Blu-ray or the DVD, which you can find online.
Yeah.
But it's not on any streaming services. You'd have to seek it out. I think the easiest way is YouTube, unfortunately, which is not a great quality.
When it's ever on TCM.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not on TCM at the moment. I'm really hoping it comes to HBO Max very soon. And I, always check your library. Right now, that's kind of tough with not a lot of libraries being open. But Emily, you're a librarian. And
I'm about to be.
Excuse me. But yeah, it's such an easy process to get classic movies through people's local libraries. So definitely want to try that out.
Nice.
You may have curbside pickup at your library right now.
Yes, mine does, thankfully.
Very thankfully. Yeah, I think I've seen Rebecca on the Criterion channel periodically, but it's one of those movies they sort of phase in and out. So it varies from day to day, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
I'd also say, what are the better Best Picture winners for sure? One of the ones that definitely holds up, at least.
Yeah, it's up there. Honestly, though, I will say this: having just watched The Grapes of Wrath recently, I prefer that movie a tiny bit. So
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So if the wins had been reversed, where Hitchcock won Best Director for this and Grapes of Wrath won Best Picture, I would be just one iota happier than I am now.
You'd be one happy Sam.
One happy Sam. Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about a movie that is a little bit more accessible, easier to stream at least. You can find this movie on the Criterion Channel streaming service, which is how I watched it. And I assume that's how you two watched it?
Yep.
Indeed.
Yes. We're going to talk about Le Trou, which is French for the whole. So you can look up either, and I think you can find either if you just do a quick old search engine search. But this is a French prison break movie directed by Jacques Becker. And it's actually an adaptation of a book that came out in 1957, which is based on a prison break escape attempt that happened in 1947. Of course, we won't give away, was it a successful attempt? Not a successful attempt?
We might actually have to, because of certain behind the scenes things that went on.
Well, we'll give a big old spoiler warning at that point. But I would say definitely watch this movie. This movie is terrific. It's another movie that's about 130 minutes. I think it's like 132 minutes.
Yep.
It came out March 18th, 1960, which is why we're bringing it up this year. So it's now celebrating 60 years, fittingly enough.
Nous, on va s'évader, mon vieux.
D'ici?
D'ici même.
Ça, en gros, c'est le plan du sous-sol de la prison. Ouais. Ouais, je comprends, mais d'après toi, où se trouve la descente d'égout?
Mais il la surveille, regarde.
J'ai jamais éprouvé ça. C'est la première fois de ma vie que je me sens bien dans ma maison.
Ouais, qu'est-ce que vous nous voulez?
And yeah, Sam, so you were the one you had seen this movie. You suggested it on the extra milestone for Pinocchio.
Yeah.
And Will and I were very intrigued by it. We decided we were going to do this with Rebecca. Emily, I think you were seeing this for the first time as well.
Yes.
Let's get into some context here.
Yeah.
What is it about this movie, so you can kind of pitch it up to the listeners as well? What is it about it that you wanted us to see? Like, why did you think this would do well for an extra milestone?
I will tell you, John, and after that, I want to know how, if either of you have heard about this before, because I'm very intrigued by that. But yes, okay. I watched this movie because, and this is really specific, but I'm going to tell it anyway. On the website Letterboxd, which I have been on for almost half a decade now, for a while there, I would go onto the list of all of the highest rated movies on the entire site and be like, which ones have I not seen or even heard of? And I saw this one way up on the list, this poster that said Le Trou on it. I'm like, oh, what's that about? And turns out it's a prison movie. I added it to my watch list promptly. And then, John, you'll remember this, in late 2018, Filmstruck announced we're terminating our service. And everyone around the world went, no, how dare you? It was really dramatic. Like, it actually, I'm not even exaggerating here. Like, I went into a little bit of a depression when I found out that it's going away. Luckily, it has
a tough time.
It has been reincarnated as the Criterion Channel, which is not quite as extensive when it comes to a huge library, but still functionally just as good when it comes to providing good content. Well worth the money. And of course, I don't remember the exact day, but Filmstruck was going away on like this specific day. Like, if everything is going away that day, and so you have however long it is to watch as many things on our service as you can. Of course, there were hundreds and hundreds that I wanted to see, but this was way up on the list. So I watched Le Trou on Halloween Day 2018, right before I went to see the premiere of The Favorite, actually, which I found out in going back to my diary and everything. So that was fun. And I just remember from the first moment being just really, really captivated by it. And it was that I was able to hold my attention without fail for the entire thing. Because I've mentioned this before, some of you know, I have a little bit of ADD, so I kind of have trouble paying attention to certain movies sometimes, especially if it's slow and dramatic and contemplative. And I love those movies, but also I have to like work hard to make sure that I'm into it. And this was completely effortless. And so I remember it for that reason. But also just beyond that, I remember thinking, this is like possibly just when it comes to actually breaking out of prison, the act of escaping from jail, this might be the best representation of it, because this movie is about that. That's kind of all there is to it. Like, there's a little bit more background, but it's basically just these prisoners breaking out of jail. And a lot of the movie is just hammering away at rocks and sawing through like metal poles and stuff. And you can see, they built an exact replica of the prison. So they actually functionally broke out of the prison in the same way that they would have had to, had it been the actual true story. So seeing it actually happen before our eyes, seeing walls be demolished in a way that does not feel artificial at all, that was really special. But also when they're not in the process of breaking out, when they're just sort of sitting around and
the preparation,
looking, not even the preparation. I'm just talking about the daily prison life. We don't see a lot of it, but it's just sitting in the cell, maybe folding a box if you're lucky enough to have gotten that kind of work, making small talk, which I imagine gets old really fast, and that's it for God knows how long. And they talk about their sentences. They don't actually know how long their sentences. So you really see why that kind of life, why that kind of incarceration is just so miserable, so existentially empty, that anyone would go to such great lengths to want to escape. But that's just kind of the basic overview of it. So, Emily, I want to know, have you ever heard of this movie before? Because I know I hadn't before looking it up on Letterboxd.
No, I'd never heard of it until you guys told me about it.
Very interesting. Yes, I'm curious to hear if what you thought of it. But first, Jonathan, what about yourself?
I think I had heard of it because I think I was aware of it through the other Jacques Becker film, Touché pas Grisby, I think is how you say it, which often gets compared to this because I think it shares an actor. And so I had that in the back of my head. But, it was never a film on my radar. It was never something that people were like, John, drop everything. You need to watch this movie.
Yeah.
Usually with Jacques Becker, there are a few other films that people recommend a little bit more readily. But I was definitely intrigued as soon as you mentioned it, because I was like, a Jacques Becker film I haven't seen. There are too many of those as it is. So
yes. Fascinating. Okay, so I guess with that, let's find out. The suspense is killing me. Emily, you watched Le Trou.
Mm-hmm.
What was your reaction to it? I'm very curious.
Could you handle Le Trou?
I don't know. I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not a huge fan of Prison Break movies.
Okay.
Not even the show Prison Break?
But I enjoyed the direction that it went. I think, like, without spoiling anything, like, the ending is pretty bleak in a way that I think is different than a lot of the other ones that I've seen. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Very interesting, but I'm sensing a little bit of reservation or hesitation, perhaps.
I don't know. I mean, like, when you talk about how, which I didn't read any trivia or anything, when you talk about how they recreated the entire prison and, like, were super dedicated to showing, like, the process of it, I think they definitely did that really well. I just gets a little slow when you watch people hammer stuff for so long, but that's just me. But yeah, I mean, like, I enjoyed watching it, especially the ending.
Yeah, the ending is really indelible, and I watched this with my cousin who hadn't seen it. I just so happened to say, like, hey, I'm watching this movie tonight, want to check it out? He was like, sure, and then he was really into it. But then when the ending happened, one of the funniest reactions I've ever seen. And so, and it was, it's a hell of an ending. So I imagine we might talk about it a little bit, but even still, just know it's a corker, folks. It's a real corker. John, you sort of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but were you a fan of Le Trou?
Well, I want to bounce off something that Emily said and say that I'm picky when it comes to prison movies in general. And I like a bunch of them. Like, I like, who doesn't like The Great Escape? Yeah. And I like Escape from Alcatraz. I like Alcatraz itself. And I was thinking about it a lot during this movie. And I like the basic stuff. I like Shawshank Redemption. But then other ones, I don't connect with Grand Illusion as well. I don't. Okay. Cool Hand Luke. I don't know.
The Birdman of Alcatraz, perhaps?
And I was thinking a lot about A Man Escaped in this.
Yes.
Robert Bresson's 1956 film.
That one's the second best prison movie, for the record.
That is an incredible film. It's really good. And I think Le Trou kind of ruined it for me because it feels like the polar opposite of it, like the other side of a coin. And one that I think I respect more. I think, like, A Man Escaped is such a film that is so elegant in its storytelling, and it's, you know, kind of maybe like Shawshank Redemption to an extent. But I mean, when you have Mozart in your score, it's hard not to be this, like, melodramatic, you know, we're going to beat, you know, the system. We're going to escape from the Gestapo, all that stuff.
I will also say real quick that the Shawshank Redemption is not as much about the actual act of breaking out. It's more about just sort of like that doesn't really come into play until the third act in a big way. But yeah.
Even so, I think that, it's a different take on the prison break where it focuses more on justifying the prisoner trying to escape. Whereas The Hole does not spend a lot of time doing that. It even sort of makes light of why these guys want to get out before they want to get out, or they can get out. And it's because a little bit of boredom, a little bit of, like, I mean, a few of them seem to be under the impression that they might be in prison for life, but not all of them. A few of them apparently feel like they could just ride this out. Their existence doesn't seem to be all that bad. They are pretty well treated by the guards. It's a very casual, laid back prison.
Laid back prison.
Isn't it?
.tumblr.com. That's what I want to see.
Look, I'm deaf, so I'm not saying this as somebody who's ableist, but these are the deafest prison guards in the history of cinema. Folks, I'm like actually deaf. I wear hearing aids. If I didn't have my hearing aids in, I would still hear these dudes blasting away at the floor.
That's for one part of the movie, but yes, it's kind of ridiculous.
It is so nonsensical. But regardless, what I appreciate about this film over A Man Escaped, and I wouldn't dare besmirch Robert Bresson, when it comes to my perspective, there is something about the sweat and the dirt of this movie and how it does not glorify what it means to break out of prison. I found that really effective. And there was a takeaway that I'm still wrapping my head around with this movie that we can get into later, but it ties into the ending and it ties into what I think Becker was trying to say with this movie. And I think it's something pretty profound, a bit more profound than a typical good versus evil kind of story, which is what we usually get with Prison Break movies. We don't usually get ones that are this thoughtful, which is why I was probably thinking of Stanford Prison Experiment, which is a strange direction for your brain to go during a movie like this, but that's where it went.
Yeah, that's very fascinating that you bring it up. Just the sweat of it. And again, like I mentioned, it's a lot of the movie is just the sort of the tediousness of like, you know, having to make sure that like they won't be able to find where we've been, and how to make sure that we can tell time somehow so that we don't get caught, and like functioning dummies out of boxes to make it look like we're still in the cell. That's a lot of fun. Just all these little wrinkles that are just so clever, and to think that it's all based seemingly quite accurately on an actual prison escape attempt makes it all the more fascinating. And I think I want to talk a little bit about sort of the context that we get right at the beginning of this movie, which is that there is this one prisoner, what's his name, Gaspard, whose cell is under construction for some reason and has to be moved to a new cell. So they put him in a cell with 4 other guys who take to him somewhat in a somewhat friendly manner, but they soon reveal like, hey, we're looking to bust out of this joint.
You in?
Are you in? Yeah, exactly. To which he says, yes, sure.
Yeah, he's very polite, very well mannered, and like you kind of wonder at that point of like, should you trust this dude? There's something about him. And so that they kind of play that up a bit of like the conversation between the inmates of like, well, should we trust him? We should ask him a few questions. And it's like almost like a play where, you know, you feel like these characters are like hashing somebody out, to the point where I found it funny where he comes back and he's like, were you talking about me? And they're like, why wouldn't we? I mean, come on, dude.
Yeah, and that remains true throughout the entire movie. The other 4 prisoners have way more of a rapport with each other than they do with the new guy throughout the entire thing. So I think that's very smart that they didn't like eventually get along really swimmingly. And so it all builds to sort of this narrative crux that ultimately decides their fate. And so I think that's really fascinating. I'm trying to think of what else, because the thing with this movie is that, like I said before, it's just kind of straightforward, just the act of breaking out of the jail, but it does that so efficiently that I'm just with it all the way. And there's something about just that confidence and just taking a path, like choosing a path and just going down it the entire way, that I really can't get enough of. So that's probably the thing I love about this movie the most.
I enjoy a good heist movie where it feels like everybody has their defined role. And, you know, Gaspard, he's kind of like he's the odd man out. He's the newbie. He's the Matt Damon from Ocean's 11. You get it. But then, you know, you have like your competent, you know, you have Roland, who's kind of this like, he's a bit of the mastermind.
Yes.
Huh?
Roland. Yes.
Who is, you know, he's not the boss, but he's definitely the person everyone kind of really relies on. And then you have Manu, who is more of like the Steve Rogers kind of like, all right, gang, like he kind of calls the shots. Like they're not going to do something without his say. And then the Reverend, who's this kind of like, I couldn't put my finger on this guy totally. And I don't know if this is another Mrs. Danvers situation, but I don't know. Am I reading too much into that?
No, I think it's there. He's just sort of there to just kind of like do whatever he can, you know, just sort of provide the moral backbone of the team.
Yeah. He's really nice to the guards. He's Mr. Congeniality. I guess I was just curious because there is a scene between Manu and Gaspard where I had the feeling of like there was something homoerotic going on there. But is that me reading into things like or what?
It hadn't occurred to me. It could very well be there though. So I don't want to say definitively. I apologize for the anticlimactic response.
Well, John, To answer your question, I don't know.
Yes. Kind of all there is to it.
I was curious though, with Geo, is he supposed to be kind of like the heart of the group or sort of like the soul of it? What was that supposed to be?
Oh, which one is Geo? I don't remember.
He's the one who is like, even if, we make it out, I'm going to stay.
Okay. Heart is not the organ I would select.
Oh yeah, he does have a bit of a libido. Yeah.
Not where I was going, but I like that you're thinking. So,
well, he does. He asks a bunch of questions of like, all right, who's your girl? Who's your girl? Who's your girl? And it's just like, dude, just relax. Like,
yeah, that's just for one brief scene, I feel.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think he's just sort of there to be like kind of the stick in the mud and just sort of, just provide a little bit of comic relief where there otherwise would be none. And I think I'm realizing as we go through this cast that they're kind of blending together for me. So maybe that is a weakness of the movie, that they don't stick out as clearly defined characters in my head.
That's interesting. They did for me, but maybe that's just because I'm fresh off of it. So
they're going to say that's because I'm French, and I'm like, yeah.
Wow.
Do you feel that way though, Emily? Or do you feel like they all just sort of like, I don't know, don't really stand out?
Yeah, for me, they kind of blended together. At least, like, apart from the two guys who kind of, like, stake everything out before everyone leaves. Or tries to leave.
That is such a good scene, by the way. I really love the whole thing where he's standing on his shoulders and going around the pillar.
It's almost laughable. Like it's something that, like, the Road Runner would do to avoid...
Yeah, the Stooges or something.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to see, like, Charlie Chaplin walk in the background or something. Yeah.
Not this movie, not in 1960, but yeah.
So okay, I'm curious then, because I'm still sort of like sorting out how I feel about this movie. I'm curious what you guys think. Is it tension you're feeling in this? Like, there's some scenes where you do feel something, like you feel like they could get caught at any moment, but then there are other scenes where, like, they're fine, like they're in a situation where no one's going to catch them, like it's sort of treated as nonchalant, but then something happens. There's like, I won't give it away, but something happens where they think somebody might be done for. And it happens out of nowhere. But I don't know, is that what works for you, Sam, with this movie, the tension, or is it something else?
Partly the tension in those moments where like something goes wrong unexpectedly. And there are a few really close calls that really got my heart racing. But also, I keep mentioning just that sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Just that sort of procedural, methodical, like day-to-day idea of what it would be like to pull off something like this. Just like all the little like gadgets and things you would have to innovate. There's one trick that one of the prisoners does with a door that just the cleverness of it just still blows my mind. And yeah, it's just kind of seeing them on the path to success. It probably helps that we don't really get a great idea as to like what got them into jail in the first place. It makes them a little bit more sympathetic since we're just sort of relating to that human resistance to captivity. Just seeing them fight back against that bit by bit, pebble by pebble, that's really what does it for me. And so it's enough to hook me and reel me in for 2 hours and 10 minutes straight. And it all amounts to something at the end, which just is just the cherry on top. Which
I can't decide if I like that we don't know what got everyone else into this place. And I think I would have to talk about the ending a little bit for that reason. But I guess I'm just sort of curious, like, would that have helped narrow down what I think is a theme of this movie, which I wonder if it is. And again, first watch, and I really haven't had time to process, but I did get the feeling of like, these guys don't really deserve to be in here. At least they don't come across that way. They're hard workers. They, like you said, they have a lot of ingenuity. They seem to be very productive with their time. And it seems like what got them into this mess and the prison might just be incidental. That's certainly what it is for Gaspard, as we find out, seemingly, right? It's like, well, he was just wrong place, wrong time, but then we find out some more things about him that might be a little bit more complex than that. But these guys, and also they're so nice to each other, and they're polite, and they seem gentle. Like at no point do you feel like these are some hard prisoners doing some real time here. I thought of the kid from 400 Blows. Like he'd be one of these guys, probably.
Maybe so. Yeah.
Eventually.
Eventually, yeah. In one of the 4 sequels to the 400 Blows. Yeah. To be fair, it's also not a hard prison, so it doesn't exactly not a environment that would make for that kind of like image of a prisoner that we have. But yeah, I could see what you're getting at.
I guess that's why I'm curious. Yeah.
I'm like kind of glad that they all weren't kind of shady characters, because then the whole questioning of one of them specifically kind of wouldn't be as strong if like no one is trustworthy. But they all seem to be like super bound together except for the new guy.
And so I guess if you leave it ambiguous, then you don't have to worry about the audience trying to decide, because everybody has their prejudices about crime. So if you're like, oh, I'm here because I did this, to some audiences, that might be sympathetic. Like, wow, he doesn't need to be in prison for that. But then other people might be like, lock him up, throw away the key, put him in solitary.
Yeah.
So and that's an interesting take.
Yeah. I think we've talked a lot about this. I think there are a few things with like the production of it that I want to mention, and also possibly maybe allude to the ending, if not just talk about it outright, because we've talked about it too much to not like say what it is,
Mm-hmm.
I'm chomping at the bit. I'm ready when you are.
Okay. So I read up a little bit on the sort of the production of this movie, and like we mentioned, based on a true story that the La Santa prison, I believe it was called, in France. Jacques Becker read the book, the fictionalized version of it, written by Jose Giovanni, found out it was based on a true story, contacted Jose Giovanni and said, "Hey, let's join forces. Let's make a movie out of this." And indeed they did. And as consultants, and again, potential spoiler warning here, they hired 3 of the prisoners involved in it to advise on factual things and stuff. And so that was really fascinating to find out. It makes it all the more genuine knowing that what you're seeing is probably more or less how it happened. So that's really powerful. But also at the beginning of the movie, we get an introduction by who we eventually find out is Roland, as I called him, one of the prisoners. That's actually one of the guys. He was involved in the prison break. And so a lot of the characters in this movie are unprofessional, or a lot of the actors, I should say, are non-professional actors, which was Jacques Becker's decision to make it feel really genuine, which it does. But also the fact that it's one of the actual prisoners just makes it that much more fun to watch. And yeah, they reconstructed the prison. Just the fact that they had to get it right. Like they're breaking through walls. So that makes it all the more fun to think like, okay, we got to get this one take, because if we screw it up, we're literally going to have to build an entirely new prison. And so that would not be fun. But also I found out very sad was that Jacques Becker tragically died 2 weeks after they wrapped production on this, which is ludicrous to think about. And so per his wishes, they finished the film and to the point where they're actually about 25 minutes still missing to this day that the ultimate editor cut out of it. I imagine more hammering, probably.
I think
chiseling.
Those 20 minutes probably are an explanation for why the plumbers look like they stepped out of a 1950s magazine.
Interesting takeaway, but okay.
I'm just saying, those plumbers were like, I was a little curious on that costume design, but all right.
Okay. But yeah, that's a lot of fun. And so I think we can just, now that that's out of the way, let's just sort of give away the ending because this thing is juicy as hell.
I do want to say real quick to what you were saying, the realism of this film is what stands out the most probably. And to the point where like there is no like musical score until the very, very end, because you don't need it. It's almost like a narrative documentary where you really just, here's what happened. And you have narrative stuff in here. Like you have characters, you have dialogue, you have all that stuff, but it just feels fly on the wall. It doesn't feel at any point like it's overproduced or overstaged. And that is pretty interesting for a film in 1960. That wasn't very popular at the time by no means.
Yeah. It's very unusual in that way. Very, very innovative thematically and narratively. And I think we could sort of specify now how exactly it turns out. So what happens is that we find out over the course of the movie that Gaspard has been put in prison because got in a fight with his wife for whatever reason, and she pulled a gun on him, and he grabbed it. They were fighting. The gun went off, and it shot her in the shoulder, like a wound. Make no mistake, but not like a fatal one, and got put in jail for that. And what we find out is towards the end of this movie, after they've done everything they need to do to break out. Like they've actually gotten to the other side of the sewer. They've reached the manhole cover where they can walk out and escape the prison. They're ready to do it that night. Gaspard gets called into the warden's office, who says to him, "Hey, to paraphrase, your wife called and she's not mad anymore. She's dropping the charges, and you're free to go past, like, beyond some just bureaucracy, just some busy work." And so all of a sudden there's this huge conflict, because imagine you're Gaspard and you've helped these other 4 prisoners. You've helped them devise an escape plan. You're ready to escape. If you go through with it, they're going to know that it was you, and that and you're going to have to be on the run forever, or you can rat them all out, probably get an even longer sentence for attempting escape. But just have that sort of definitive conclusion in mind. So it's this real conflict, and we don't actually know what happens, because he comes back from the warden's office. They say, "What took you so long? You were in there for like 2 hours." And he said, "Oh, just talking." And so they're all putting their outside clothes on, their freedom clothes on, and they have this little mirror attached to a toothbrush, which helps them like look out into the hallway and see if any guards are coming. They look one way, coast is clear. They look the other way, and in the greatest shot of the entire movie, like dozens of cops are standing there looking directly into the mirror.
Ooh, it's such a jump. You're like, whoa, no.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When my cousin Donovan say that, like, jaw hit the floor, scream of pain and anguish and just exclamation, and then Gaspard screams, and then they come rushing in and the siren goes off, and it's just so crushing. It is such a defeat, and it really makes what could have been a really quite good. It still would have been almost as good if they had just escaped, and that would have been it. It would have been really, really satisfying to see them get out. But instead, that it was all for nothing, because just this one little wrench was thrown into it at the last minute. It just makes it all the more memorable. And to this day, that is always what I will think about when I think about this movie, is how it all comes crashing down so tremendously right at the end. And I loved every second of it.
All right, let's rip it apart at the themes. My last pun for the evening.
The themes, yes.
So, what did you think of this ending? How does it rank on your bleak-o-meter?
Pretty bleak. I'd say 9 out of 10. Just because, I don't know, I feel like what I liked about the movie was the way, like, the places that they have to go. It always made me uncomfortable, because I kept thinking about whether or not they'll get stuck in that place, and how much worse it is than where they were, and like just in prison. And so then to like go through that, and then you're stuck in there. I mean, like, you're still in jail after that. Like, that sucks. But I think that if it would have gone completely great and whatever, we wouldn't have really cared about the story as much, and like it wouldn't separate it from like any kind of Hollywood escape. And I think it goes really well with like the realism of showing us everything they do to try to get out, and this feels like a very realistic ending.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that if they had just escaped, we probably just would have seen it and been like, oh, that was fun, cool. But it's because they don't that it sticks in the mind. I hadn't thought about that, but you're totally right. I love that.
That's right, because they would have had to have invented something dramatic about it, like with Escape from Alcatraz. Like they were successful in the real life story of escaping. Now, I won't give away what happens to those people because that's still part of the mystery. But in this movie, it's real. The realism of what happened informs the realism of the film, because the film is about this is who people really are. And this is how our justice system works, where the person who least deserves to be free, Gaspard in this case, the least honorable person, is the one seemingly he will get away with everything. Now, we don't know for sure if his deal with the governor is honored, if he ends up leaving the prison at some point, if it's true that she's withdrawn, his wife, the charges. But I think the movie makes it pretty clear he is a terrible person because, and they kind of gloss over it a little bit, where clearly he was cheating on his wife with a teenage girl who happened to be her sister. And that gets brought up, and like, you wonder for a second, you're like, wait a minute, the kind of person who does that, is not this sort of genteel persona he's putting on. And what I like about this movie is that it says something interesting about infidelity and how the type of person who would sell out a spouse in the most horrendous way will sell somebody else out for something else, not trying to equate infidelity with landing people in prison, but just sort of pointing out how the mistakes or the sins that we have sort of come from one place as to who we are. And if you're willing to do this thing, it kind of informs that you're willing to do this other bad thing because you can justify it in your mind. And the movie is so subtle about showing you that, this is not a good dude. Like anybody who would do that to his wife. And it makes you wonder like what really happened, whether or not like the way he explains it, there's a lot of deception that seems to be happening there as well. So that's what I like about this movie is it paints a portrait of a human being that is complex and pretty bleak, but also pretty true to life and informative. Yeah,
it's a hell of a flick, and I really dig it for all the reasons we talked about. I think that's about everything I got. Is there anything else that either of you two had for Le Trou?
Just one thing about there's this one shot where they're like walking down this hallway corridor thing, and like the camera stays away in the darkness, and then like all you see is their little light going further and further away. I just love that so much. It looks so cool to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of great imagery in this movie.
That last line, uttered by Roland himself, you feel that is him.
Yeah,
laying it on. Poor Gaspard.
Yeah, he's he's going to a genuine place for that because that was, of course, that actually happened. So.
Right. Gosh. That he is showing pity, and they even play it up to is like, oh, it's not my first prison break, having some fun with that true fact. Yeah. But yeah, just like giving this real person a chance to sort of air their grievance and be the hero of a story that normally he wouldn't be, normally in this culture, like the hero of this story would probably be the warden trying to, we did it. We stomped down this prison break by these lowlives.
Yeah.
But, no, this is France in the 1960s, so we have something much more insightful about the prison system for sure. Although I gotta say, if our prisons were that nice, crime would go down. I think. Yeah. I don't know.
we may never know.
I don't know if it's realistic whatsoever, but there was just something weird about like. The cop just like walks in, it's like, oh, hey, what's up? You don't like the soup? Sorry about that. Just like every Hollywood version of prison that we get fed is such a, You hate the food? Well, too bad. And then they hit you. It's just like, prison seems awful.
It could be just a difference, like a cultural difference thing, because it is a different country. Plus, the way I read into that was that they probably just don't see any reason to be like to have that kind of antagonistic relationship. Like, what's the point of it, really? I saw it as being a very logical way of going about things.
That was one thing that I didn't think about until now, was like in other like Hollywood versions of prison, there's more enemies within like the inmate population, and I feel like there isn't that much of that like feeling that they're probably going to hurt you in your sleep, like the guys that he's sleeping with in the cell and stuff, which was interesting to me. And they didn't at least like play it up as much as American films would.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, there's a scene where like prisons have this system of like delivering things to other prisons using like a hairbrush and a string. That's a lot of fun to see. So they're clearly like, they just see no reason to have any animosity specifically towards any prisoners. And even the end, like there's only a little bit of an outburst, but then of course they just sort of accept their fate really in a really dignified way. So that's fascinating to see.
All right. Well, I guess that'll do it. I consider the whole an extra milestone. I don't know about you guys, but I think you do too, right, Sam?
A little bit, yeah. It's okay,
It's okay.
Yeah.
Emily, I'm not so sure. It seems like you think it might be like a milestone, maybe not an extra milestone. I don't know.
I mean, like going into this conversation, I was like, I don't know. But like, even just discussing, I think what makes it different within the genre, I think it could be out of appreciation for like what it does. Maybe not my like experience watching it, but like I know what it achieves in like how it differs from other movies. So I think that makes it a milestone.
All right.
Very nice. Certainly deserves to be more widely seen regardless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you have the Criterion channel, what are you doing? Why are you listening to this? We've given away the ending.
Well, speaking of endings, but really beginnings, Sam Nolan, what are we talking about on the nextra milestone?
Well, we're going to do that every time. I've done that myself, so I can't be too mad.
I can't resist. Like moth to flame.
Moth to a flame, yes. Yeah, so as I mentioned at the top of the show, I have recorded an episode with Adonis Gonzalez. We've, having foregone some technical difficulties, sort of weaved our own web of podcasting, and so most likely either a week or perhaps 2 weeks from now, you will hear that episode. Then the episode after that, I'm going to be doing an episode with my dear friend, Andrew McMahon, who has not appeared on any podcast so far, but is one of the smartest people I know when it comes to film history. We're going to be talking about a lot of fun stuff. We haven't decided all of the movies we're going to be talking about, but at least one of them will be Michelangelo Antonioni's The Passenger, which I'm very excited to talk about. He's a really big fan of that movie. I'm not unfond of it myself, so we're going to be talking about that. And then possibly some others. Haven't quite decided on that, but at least look forward to that. And then the episode after that, Julia Tatey is returning to the extra milestone after, I guess it'll be over a year at this point. And we also haven't completely finalized what we're going to talk about, but it's looking like it's either going to be The Sound of Music or East of Eden, or perhaps All Quiet on the Western Front.
I thought you were going to say Slacker.
Not Slacker, John. That only premiered in April of 1990. It did not go wide until 1991. So next year, baby.
Right.
I look forward to it.
Hope so.
I look forward to it, and you should as well. But that is for a later date. So a lot of fun stuff on the horizon of the extra milestone. And of course, there is much more even beyond that as we frivolously attempt to catch up to the present 1 week at a time. We'll get there eventually, I know.
All right, well then, for now, don't forget, you can find our Twitter, our Facebook, everything like that in the show notes. My Twitter and Sam's Twitter, or Letterboxd, I should say. But Emily, for listeners who they haven't heard too much of you so far, where can they find you on this net that we call the internet?
I am always on Twitter, Emily Coob _. And there you can find all of my writing on Film School Rejects, mostly about film history and old movies.
That's right. Lots of stuff to get to there, because a lot of old movies we're gonna get into for the rest of the year, because we have tons of time, and we're that's a silver lining, I guess, for some of us. So
Yeah.
we'll see you all, I guess, in a week or two or however long.
We'll figure
and we'll
it
see,
out.
of course. Yes, maybe sooner. And we'll see you on the main show later this weekend. But for now, I am John Negroni from the Internet, California.
And from the Internet, Colorado, I am Sam Noland.
Am I doing one?
And
Yeah.
you don't have to.
I will do it. I'm from the Internet, Pittsburgh. I'm Emily.
I could feel you didn't wanna. You're like, Pittsburgh's not an internet. It just can't be. See you next time.